just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
Friday Jobber. On the 9th of November 2018, the first Friday Jobber after Election Day, we are here from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth and beaming from WBRN Radio and over the Boston Red Network. Incidentally, our Ouija board model did not do too badly. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. But we have several races out there that are basically too close to call. One in Arizona, the candidate there, Ms. Sinema, is ahead in the counting ballots there. That's one of the things of modern day elections, that you have absentee ballots, provisional ballots, etc. You had absentee ballots, but not in the numbers that you now have. In the state of Florida, they are recounting the senatorial race there between Scott, the governor, and Senator Nelson. Now, in Broward County, there's an African-American lady there that the governor has decided to use I think it's the Florida Law Enforcement Agency, to insinuate that there are irregularities in Broward County, and she is the one at fault. Now, the problem with any of these things, we've had the problem, we were there in 2000, when the election was stolen from Albert Gore of Tennessee. He won the election. It came down to Florida. The Supreme Court stopped it, and G.W. Bush ended up in the White House. Now, that would not happen now, because we would have mass protests. In fact, the Republicans were talking about using the late Billy Graham and whatever else they could get together to protest it. The Democrats did not protest it in terms of a mass mobilization. That has changed. One thing to remember about the 2018 election, it was a mass mobilization of young people, 18 and up, of African Americans, the followers of O.J. Simpson. Women. The Women's March started the spark plug. I think the last count I've seen, there will be 100 women in the House of Representatives. Basically 25% of the place. So there are changes being made. Ms. Sinema, if she gets into Senate from Arizona, and already Heller got knocked off by Ms. Rosen in Nevada. So in other words, the Republicans picked up some seats and they knocked off Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. That was expected. And also Claire McCaskill in Missouri. And Senator Donnelly in Indiana. But what that comes forth here is that the ability of the Republicans plus the Trump operation to mobilize their followers is somewhat limited. Period. Even in so-called red states, in the state of Georgia, that's another state that's on the protest there. Kemp has been trying to do as much as he can do. Kemp was the Secretary of State till yesterday. He resigned, and he's trying to make a transition. But that will not happen until all the votes are counted. Now, if Kemp goes in as an illegal governor, he'll be reminded of it. People will protest that. People will boycott Georgia. It's not like it's going to go away like in the case of Albert Gore. It will not go away. It will continue on. The people are now mobilized, and they're mobilized more than at any point in recent electoral history of the U.S. Now back to our Ouija board model, that's the one that we have, as opposed to the crystal ball that is out of Larry Sabato's shop. And we'll get to Sabato and his crystal ball. They're saying, well, we said, and this is what happened. Well, the whole problem was they had a number of toss-ups there that tossed up, so to speak. But as far as the House of Representatives, it is the most representative of the American electoral process, because every 2 years you will have, or every 4 years you will have or every 2 years actually, the entire House up for re-election, whereas the Senate is staggered at 6-year terms. But what had happened there, even in places like Utah, Nina Love, the sole African-American woman Republican in the House, lost her election. And there are many more of them that are losing on the week that was. We'll come to the list of these various characters that have fallen. So things have changed, no doubt about it. In the state of Georgia, that is going on. In Florida also, we have situations there. Let me just get to some of that. Oops. This is in the Miami Herald here. Big headline statement brought you 2000's presidential recount will try to outdo itself in 2018. This is written by David Smalley and Alex Harris, dated the 8th of November. Florida, the land of the hanging chad, for people that remember that, the butterfly ballot and the Brooks Brothers riot may just outdo itself. The state that drug the presidential election to a crawl nearly broke the country's stirred democratic process 18 years ago is once again headed towards uncertainty in a statewide recount, except this time, instead of one of national importance, race, at least a free critical contest may be tilted again in the they have 67 counties in the state of Florida. More than 48 hours after the country concluded the midterm, it's still unknown who will be Florida's next senator, next governor, and the Florida Agricultural Commissioner. I think it's fair to say right now that the results of the 2018 Senate election are unknown. That is Mark Ellis, the lead attorney representing Senator Nelson. The state elections unexpectedly devolved into climatic Thursday, thanks largely to thousands of votes belatedly ticking out from where else? Heavily Democratic South Florida. On Wednesday, it appeared that the Republicans have pulled off the sweep in the country's swing state, largest swing state, snaring the governor's mansion, all three cabinet positions, and Senator Nelson, Andrew Gillum, the Democrat running for governor, was certain he had lost. He conceded, and this is what happens when you concede too early. As the votes count updated on Wednesday overnight, with election workers running ballots through voting machines in the early morning, the margin shrunk. Governor Scott, who on Tuesday declared victory over Nelson, was suddenly a mere 15,000 votes ahead and heading for a recount. Gillum suddenly was down to only 37,000. Unconceded, there is such a thing. In other words, he just took it back. And that was the end of that. Nikki Fry, a Democrat candidate running for Agriculture Committee, Commissioner, actually leapfrogged over the Republican, Caldwell, to take a lead, leading Caldwell's campaign to holler about potential corruption. Scott filed a lawsuit against Supervisor Brenda Snipes. There's Miss Snipes here, held a press conference to announce he'd ordered the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to investigate into the beleaguered politician. Bragg County Supervisor of Elections, Snipes, gave an update on the progress of ballots that are being counted for the midterm. We have all seen incomplete and irregularities of voting tabulations in Palm Beach and Bragg County for years. Well, here we go again. Scott said from podium at the governor's mansion, I will not sit idly by while unethical liberals. He's a liar. Anyway, Democrats meanwhile voiced uncertainty about the prospects of Secretary Ken Dessner. He's an appointee of Scott. Dessner will need to order a machine recount for any races within 1/2 point. There, in large counties like Miami-Dade County, the process could take days. I want to make sure that there are objective observers who participate in the entire recount for every vote to make sure that there are no questions about how it's conducted. That's Democratic Representative Ted Dorsch during a visit to the Bragg County election headquarters. In that the election of Bush won, that was by a mere 537 votes after the Supreme Court stopped the the statewide recount. Confusion, butterfly ballots in Palm Beach County led Democrats to vote for a conservative Pat Buchanan. He was in that mess there, and so was Mr. Nader. Snipes grew far from Republicans around the state, as she was unable to say how many outstanding ballots her department had yet to count in a county where Democrats heavily outnumber Republicans. Every batch of votes counted means the Democratic candidate inches closer there, and the criticism was bipartisan. Ellis claimed the Stipes office likely had a machine calibration problem after more than 24,000 votes appeared to skip in the Senate race. There was no calibration issue, Stipes said, who had no explanation why her office was reporting two different turnout totals on the website. Stipes, who was appointed to her post by Baby Bush in 2002 to replace beleaguered, we remember that, Marion Oliphant, since has been re-elected several times. With had no comment when told that Scott was suing and hoped to have her investigated. Well, so this is the Miami Herald here, a newspaper out of Florida, and this is the current situation down there, period. And here are the latest numbers, and we'll see where it is, but just too close to call. 3 Florida races. We have DeSantis at 49.61%. He has 4,772,906 votes. Andrew Gillum is at 49.91%. He's moving close to 50% also at 813 votes there. So they both have 4 million votes. They are getting closer and closer together. Gillum has 4,079,000. Old Scott has this is Nelson. I'm sorry about that. Nelson has Scott has 4,094,000 votes. Bill Nelson has 4 million, almost 80,000 votes here. So they're coming very, very close here, and it's tracking very close. The Agriculture Commissioner is Cantwell at 49.98%, has 4,021,000. And Nikki Fry has 50.2% there, 4,024,000. She's about 3,000 votes ahead. So that is some of the voting here. And let's see, we have the governor's race. And this is, I think I did give this correctly. DeSantis at 49.61% and Andrew Gillum at 49.17%. So DeSantis has 4 million, and so does Andrew Gillum. He is 4,072,000, and Andrew Gillum's is 36,000, and the votes are still coming in. So this is going to be a very, very interesting vote down in Florida. Let's skip on here, and we'll go to this is Miami Day again. We went there and look at the 2020 presidential race of all things. Just a second here. Oops. Incidentally, the Fox Network, while we're just looking here at the election survey, reflects how the vote is. This is from the University of Chicago. This is a new way of doing it, a new methodology, and they're moving away from the old exit polls that was put out by the Edison people. Excuse me. A number of outlets are using it. The Wall Street Journal is using it. The Associated Press, they call it Votecast, debuts on Tuesday, and there's an article here in the Neiman Reports about this particular method. We at Cranston Analytics have been using a very similar method for over 20 years. Now, primarily the difference here is what they are doing is they are interviewing both people that did vote, people did not vote. They're calling people. They're using also the internet and they're not relying on the so-called exit polls, which are all off. For that reason, the Fox network, another adherent to this new method, called the election as far as the House, that the Democrats had taken the House, at about 4:30, I believe it was, Eastern Time, 3:30 Eastern Time. The Ouija board, that is our model, we called the same thing, so we were actually ahead of them. It didn't matter anyway. As LBJ would say, or anyone who's been to a goat roofing contest understood that the Democrats would in fact pick up seats enough to take the House over. But there was some heeing and hawing around. We had that from a number of operators. And speaking of heeing and hawing, we're heeing and hawing here. Trying to find our next program up here. What has happened to us? Don't tell me. This happens in a live TV. We'll take a break here. A station break. WBRN Radio. Nonetheless, this is a list of presidential candidates. We won't go over all of them because they have a number 15. Somebody, Dame Delaney from Maryland. I don't know who the hell Delaney is. It doesn't really matter. He's in Iowa. Michael Avante, I suppose. He is the attorney for Stormy Daniels. He's been hitting it in Iowa. He's a charismatic fellow, and he's listed as 14. In the 13th spot is our own Deval Patrick, seen by many at one time as sort of a Obama replacement drop-in. And then in number 12 spot is the Hillary Clinton. He began talking about it a few weeks ago how qualified she felt to be the next president. Well, this is a different, we jump ahead too far here, 2020, different type of election, and we had to use anything from 2018 to be a more grassroots election. Then 11, there's Amy Klobuchar. She won re-election by 24 points in Minnesota. She's pragmatic, etc. She may be pragmatic, and I'm not sure why she's down. I would put her much more up the list than that. And then you have people like Terry McAuliffe. I'd forget about him. Said he's going to Iowa. He's wasting his time. Michael Bloomberg's wasting his time. But our own Beto O'Rourke. Now, Beto O'Rourke, his style of campaigning reminds me of John F. Kennedy when he campaigned in 1960. Energetic, a young man, came within 3 points in the very red state of Texas of knocking off Ted Lyon Cruz. So he's a fella that once he gets into Iowa, that he could mobilize the Ute vote. He can mobilize African Americans, the followers of O.J. Simpson, Latinos. He can mobilize that sector, and women. And he can also appeal to ordinary working class people. He's the one that I would see as having more of an appeal. They have Sherrod Brown here. He's a senator from Ohio. He's out of the Appalachian part of Ohio. Kristen Gillibrand, she's from upstate New York. They put her at 6. I would have not necessarily done that. And then Twitter King Cory Booker at 5. Twitter King just simply cannot go up against Beto O'Rourke if he's in the race. Throw him out of there. Joe Biden is more of a Beto O'Rourke type person. And you have Kamala Harris. She's out of California. She's more of a corporate candidate. And of course, rightfully they list Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a man that literally put it all there, period. And he's the man that would have won the 2016 race had he not been cheated out of the nomination in the Democratic Party. Now, Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's a different type of person that is running, no doubt. She has bona fides as a progressive person, but could she, with her Native American ancestry operation, go forward? And this is one of the more important things to remember, how people look at, particularly at Native Americans. We'll do this on the Week with Was. We'll get into this, but one of the representatives from the red state of Oklahoma, Mark, whatever his name is, Mark Wayne or something like that. Anyway, he is a member of the Cherokee tribe, and said that he'd arrived there before the Cherokees. He's a fellow that called the Trail of Tears an opportunity. Well, his people came and settled land, and he still lives on that particular homestead. Now, how much Cherokee he is, I have no idea. But the point is there, by the so-called blood thing, the tribes apply that differently. So we'll get into that, and a lot of it is the culture, how the culture itself address those kinds of things. So nonetheless, in this little rundown, Elizabeth Warren's number 2, Bernie Sanders number 2, and why Kamala Harris is number 3, I have no idea. Vice President Biden, and then they have... The problem here is many of these characters will simply just not make it. They're wasting time, and they're wasting money. And that's the thing to remember. Now, could somebody come out of nowhere that has been on the horizon? Yes, that could happen. Do we expect it to happen? We don't know. What I can tell you is, according to the Ouija board model, if the election were held today, re-election, DJ Trump would not be re-elected. We are certain of that. And pollsters usually don't do that. A federal judge has blocked the Keystone pipeline, XL pipeline, saying the Trump administration's review ignored the climate change effects. A federal judge temporarily blocked, I don't like how this is written, but his name is Brian Morris. He's in Montana. Said that Trump's State Department ignored the critical issues of climate change in order to further the president's goal of letting the pipeline be built. Now, this will be out here, a 54-page opinion. We'll have more on this. Hit the administration with a familiar charge. They had disregarded facts established by experts during the Obama administration. Trump administration claims no supporting information that those impacts would have proved inconsequential, as Morris wrote. So this is the Sierra Club. Their attorney, Doug Hayes, in a statement said the lawsuit, prompting Thursday's order was brought by a collection of opponents, including Indigenous Environmental Network, the Northern Plains Resource Council. That is actually a conservative a conservation coalition based in Montana itself. So the Keystone Pipelines permit decision was largely in the hands of the Department of State. So that is one on. That would be would transport 830 bales of oil, crude oil per day from Alberta, Canada, and Montana to Oklahoma and the Gulf Coast. The pipeline would stretch 875 miles through Montana, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and the rest continuing into Canada. So this is a very important decision here, and we will have more on it. I assume they will appeal it. We don't know exactly what they'll do. Not at this point in time. To the crystal ball, we have evidently some construction going on around here. It took a lot of crazy glue, but we think we pinned the crystal ball back together. They're reassembling after 2010 shattered us, and just about everywhere. This is by old Larry Sabato himself and Kyle Klondike. that the Democrats would win 229 to 206 for a net of 34 seats, exactly the seat changes we picked in our final selection. Well, Democrats built their new margin in part by persuading voters in many Republican-held districts that Hillary Clinton won, and the 25 Clinton won Republican districts. Democrats have at least 14 and likely will have several more. It's not finished yet. On Staten Island, and they have Steve Russell in Oklahoma. That's the 5th district, I believe. Another surprising Democrat win came in Charleston. That was Mark Stanford's old seat. And a number of other seats here that they were able to get. The Republicans do get free Senate seats, giving them 54 now. They don't have the magic 60 there. A couple of supposedly close races that we've already talked about. Betoo-Rourke there. There will be one more Senate race on. This is in Mississippi. I always forget about this one. This is Cindy Hyatt Smith and Mike Espy. And Mike Espy was in the Clinton administration. Had some ethical problems of his own. But he is an African American, and of course that is Mississippi. I need not say any more. Meanwhile, Democrats appear to net several governorships in Illinois. It don't appear they have. Wisconsin, Boss Walker will be gone come January, and in the state of Michigan, of course, Gateway Snyder had resigned. So this is the crystal ball and their musings here, trying to save faith. There's many of them trying to save faith these days, I suppose. Let me just check on our time here. We're doing okay. We're rolling along. It's time, as they say, to do the sports. We'll do the NBA and hockey, because we have to do something. And I'm trying to find ESPN here. Yeah, here we go. Running a little late, and that's kind of unfortunate too, because we are it's a construction problem. Hopefully it's not too bad. Well, it depends on which one we get at first. This is the NHL scores from last night. The Canucks were at the Bruins in Boston, and it was 8-6 Canucks over the Bruins. The Oilers were at the Panthers 4-1. The Coyotes and Flyers. The Flyers flew by them 6-4. The Sabres and Canadiens in final overtime 6-6. And the Golden Knights and Senators, it was Golden Knights 5-3. The Islanders and the Lightning 4-2. And I'm not sure who was drinking music this. That's okay. The Hurricanes and Blackhawks in Chicago. Hurricanes 4-3. Sharks and Stars. And finally, the Wild Kings. Wild 3-1 over the Kings. And we'll get rid of the music here. To the NBA, we have, the Rockets were at the Thunder in OKC. It was the Thunder 98-80. And in overtime, the Celtics were in Phoenix. Celtics pulled that one out, 16-104. And the Clippers and Trailblazers in Portland. It was the Trailblazers 116-105. And finally, the Bucks of Milwaukee, the Warriors. It was the Bucks 134-111. And that is the end of sports. We'll see you tomorrow morning on the week that was, as we normally do. We also have a Numbers Man report. That's our financial unit of macroeconomics. The Fed, incidentally, did not raise the interest rate. We were expecting them to. And also the chair of the Fed did not hold a news conference. We also have an open source report coming up. That's our technical report. The Android people just concluded their conference. We'll report on it. The merger, or actually not the merger, the buyout of Red Hat, that's a Linux provider by IBM. Some of the things we'll be talking about. And we'll also be talking about the election in Florida from a technical standpoint. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on the week that was, Saturday morning, from WBRN, Boston Red Network, Boston Red in the Jared Pippin broadcast booth. Good day.